Well, g'day. Iron Horse here, and today's Sunday, the something of June. I think it might even be 1st of May, if I know. Hang on. That'd be the 30th of June, 2024. Anyway, I'm just going to tell a story. Just going to rant, and I'm not going to say anything meaningful. I'm not here to convince you that the Earth is flat and we're not spinning through a vacuum of space. I'm just going to scratch my arms because they're really itchy. Like I'm a junkie or something. But I'm not. I'm actually very clean when it comes to using drugs and chemicals and stuff. And as a result, I have a very, very vivid dream life. I may probably use alcohol a little bit more than is necessarily healthy for my own good, but it agrees with me, and I don't do stupid things most of the time as a result of it. I look after my health, and I eat pretty well, but sometimes I feel like this world is just mediocre, mundane, somewhat even meaningless, you might even say. And maybe that's a result of some of my past actions. And, I've had my children, 3 awesome children. I've been divorced. I've had some excellent businesses in the past. I've had a pretty good life. So, if anything should happen to me in the near future and I'm no longer with us, well, I got no regrets. I'm pretty happy. And in fact, I look forward to crossing back over because I've been to the other side several times during my journey. Could start with telling the story when I was 11 years old. I have to lubricate the throat. I mean, I've been to the other side prior to birth. In fact, the conversation came up yesterday. God, my arms are itchy. I need some crack, man. I think I've got parasites or something. Anyway, had a conversation last night. Well, I didn't actually jump in. I sort of wanted to, but with Katie didn't, which is interesting because my sister Katie called me yesterday. We had a conversation. But anyway, she was talking about people remembering their own birth. And not only do I remember my own birth, I actually have memories of being in the womb. Make that what you will, like I had consciousness before I was born. And it's mostly just dreaming, sleeping, listening to the voices. And for many years as a child, I'd listen to those very same voices falling asleep, and it just brought back memories from being in the womb. My parents on a regular basis would go visit my grandparents out in Raglan and play cards. I think they used to play cribbage and gin rummy, bridge, who knows. They played cards, and just listening to their voices, not knowing what they're talking about, used to give me a sense of comfort. I'd be lulled to sleep, and then parents would drag us home late at night, and you'd fall asleep in the car again, and then you'd woken up again and go back to bed. So we do spend a lot of our time in our sleep and in our subconscious and in our dreams. And I have a very, very vivid dream life. I have repetitive dreams regularly. I've had past life dreams. I've had all sorts of things. But this one time when I was 11 years old, I had a most interesting experience. Like a couple of years earlier, this brand new super fast XPT train, the express train, came out across New South Wales. And this was the bee's knees for the new form of travel. From Bathurst to Sydney, it was now, I don't know, whatever it was, a couple of hours or something. It was a heck of a lot faster. Most of the old trains, they're sort of steam engines, and there's no electrical line on this. So I believe the XPT was this new diesel engine. Probably been using diesel for years, by the way. But this was the super fast one. And basically where I lived out, when we moved from Bathurst out to Raglan, eventually we built on the block of land that my mother got for her 21st birthday, or was it 18th or something. Grandfather gave all the children a block of land as a gift when they came of age. And so we moved out there, brand new house, and got a new bike for Christmas. My first one was the orange little BMX, and loved that thing. But eventually I saved up my money and bought off a friend of my older brother, who was also a year older than him. He had the racing bike, 10-speed racing bike, that was like the bee's knees. 10 speeds, gears and hand brakes and you name it. But the bike was way too big for me. But I didn't care. I loved it. It also had a speedometer on it and a headlight. I think I might have bought the headlight for it, actually. But battery powered, the old D cells. So yeah, I've got a pretty good memory of stuff. So anyway, as it turned out over the period of time, because there's all these level crossings between the, across the railway, and my grandfather had exactly that, and I used to ride across it all the time to go and water the cows for him during the school holidays, for example. He'd give me 20 cents a day to go and fill the water troughs up, which it was pretty good money for me, So basically you'd reach a gate, you'd open that gate, you'd drive onto the railway tracks, you'd go back, close that gate, go and open the next gate, drive through that, go back and close that gate. And by doing it in that order, there was less chance of cows getting onto the tracks, because that can be quite dangerous. However, as a result of the XPT, all these old school people that use these level crossings all the time, they'd look, it's clear, do exactly that. By the time they got back in the car, suddenly the XPT's bearing down on them and wiping them out. A lot of people were getting killed, and it got to the stage where they had to make announcements on the news and television that we need to stop killing people on these tracks, take extra care on them, and eventually they'd get to the point where they closed all these two-gate railway level crossings because they just became too dangerous. And now basically all of them had to become gated with the automatic gates and the alarms and bells and whistles, flashing lights and all the rest. So this was where I grew up. And at the top of the hill at Raglan, it's above what they call the Bathurst Hill. It's one of the steepest inclines of the trains between Bathurst and Sydney, because all the way through the Blue Mountains they built tunnels so the trains could stay flat and level. But the Raglan Hill was a big climb, a big heavy push for them. And so me in my childhood innocence and boredom and whatnot, I'd sometimes just wait at the top of the hill because I could hear a train coming up. And just as they passed the Raglan station, that's when they start building up some speed again, and then they start and go on the straight and level. And alongside that, there's this big, long dirt road, maybe a kilometre or so. And so I'd be there waiting for them, and I'd start at the same time as them. And sometimes the train drivers would see me and toot their horn, and we'd be racing, having a big race. And eventually we get to the bridge, and they'd be way too fast for me, and they'd take off into the distance. And I'd be like, oh, that's fun. So that's how I sort of filled my days. But on this one particular day, I thought, you know what? I'm going to keep on going down that next little hill and cross the railway line and follow the track. And I'm going to go all the way to Lithgow. I don't know what I was thinking, because it's a pretty long way to go. But that's what I made up my mind I thought I'd do. But that very morning, of course, was the very same day when that warning came out of the people to be particularly careful when crossing the railway lines. And me as a child, I thought, I've grown up around these things. I know them, me and my cousins would just put our ear down to the track to see how many miles away they were. We were clued on with the trains, so I had no fears whatsoever. Yet my parents said, because of this thing that just came out on the newspapers and on the radio and television, whatever, I said, just take extra care around the railway lines. And because they knew I used to play around them all the time, they gave me that extra warning. And I must also mention that my grandfather grew up as a very strict sort of person, because he grew up with the guilt I can't remember if it was his older or his younger brother. I think it might have been his younger brother. He had this huge guilt because he was told very specifically not to play around the railway lines, and where they were, I can't remember exactly now where, but had one of these big turntable things for the engine to turn around on. And because they were playing around it, he and his brother came into an accident. His brother got killed in this thing. And so he became super strict because he got into so much trouble for himself that when he brought up his 9 children, he was a bit of a strict rule master that you do what you're told. You don't disobey what you're told to do in it. So in a sense, I had this underlying feeling that I know better than the adults. And so I'm not going to listen to what they told me. I'm not going to take extra care. I'm just going to do what I want. And so on my 10-speed bike, I got across the tracks. I sort of got off to walk it across because they're really rough and bumpy, big lumpy gravel and shit. You know, it's not the sort of thing you'd ride a 10-speed on. But once I got to the other side of the dirt road, I started riding. But as I got further and further along it, the ruts in it, I don't know if you've ever seen the corrugated ruts that get in the dirt roads. It was like if you go really fast on it. It got to the point where they were unbearable. There was big sort of muddy puddles, and I thought, this is not a suitable road to be riding a 10-speed racing bike on, let alone even my BMX if I had bought it. But I sort of outgrown it at this stage. And so I decided, it's a lovely, beautiful, sunny day. The cicadas are humming. It's just this beautiful vibe in the air. And so I thought, I'll just turn around and go back home. Up and ventured, nothing gained. It was a dumb idea. Who'd want to go to Lithgow anyway? It's just a silly mission I had in my head. So I turned around and I come back, and when I got back to crossing over the tracks, the sound of the cicadas in the air, and there's just this beautiful vibe on a lovely sunny day. I got this feeling in my head of just stopping to soak up the moment. That's what it was. It was just a pause to soak up the feeling. I knew how the trains worked. I could hear them from miles away. I didn't have a care in the world. And I'm standing right in the middle of the tracks, end to end, going across them, handlebars in my hands, and just enjoying the moment. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this huge rush comes behind me, almost pulling me backwards as the XPT is rushing behind me, and I'm standing next to the tracks. I'd gone from standing on them to standing next to them, almost been sucked in by the force. And I have no recollection whatsoever how I went from one to the next. All I know is that for weeks and months afterwards, I'd keep going back to that spot, looking for wherever I went, because I went through some sort of portal. I don't know how or why. I can't explain it. It felt like I'd gone sideways through a gate and then popped back out the other side or something. I searched. As an innocent child, I had no idea what I was looking for. I just knew that where I went somewhere amazing. And I wanted to go back. Could not explain it. Because the time was nothing between standing on the tracks to standing next to them. There was no time. It was just instant, this force of nearly being pulled back. But a part of me was searching for something that I knew. It's not in my memory, but it's still there somewhere. And I went looking. I actually physically used to try and step through something, thinking there's a gate there that you can, if you just turn enough and go through sideways, you'll get through it. So I really don't know what happened. I don't know if on that particular day, my parents might have lost their child in another realm, in another dimension. I don't know, because I'm just in this one. And in this one, I was still here. I went home. My parents never knew I was gone. Nobody knew nothing. Life went on. So here I am now, 53 years old, and just thinking about a vivid dream I had the other night. And it has nothing to do with that story about when I was 11 on the bike and going through to the other side or anything like that whatsoever. Quite often I have these vivid dreams where it's not the astral realm, because astral means star. So I'm definitely in a physical realm, and it feels just as real as this one, except my ability to fly exists and do some amazing, amazing things. And because I'm aware of myself being in that realm, sometimes I feel I can do it in this one. You know, when you just look in the distance and you just picture yourself flying, but your body just doesn't behave that way here in this realm. But in the dream realm, again, I hesitate to use the word astral. It is the most commonly used term for it, the astral realm, but it's not. It's still real. I don't know. It's real and imaginary, but isn't this realm also basically all within my mind? Like everything is just electrical impulses, light entering my eyes, sensations on my skin, sounds in my ear, feelings, taste, eat and drink we shall. Isn't it all in a solipsistic sort of way, all within? I mean, for you this might seem real, and for me it feels quite real, but is it? Or is it just an illusion? I know Jesus often talked about this being the world of illusion, and in a sense, I guess, well, things come, things go, everything is temporary, so nothing is real except how you feel. Don't quote me on that, I'm not a poet. Don't I know it? So anyway, this dream I had the other night, it was just mind-blowing, mind-blowingly awesome. And of course I didn't want it to end, but as soon as I sort of come to the realization that I have to be dreaming because this isn't possible, it doesn't always ruin it. It doesn't always take the fun out of it. But I have to remind myself, hey, this must be a dream because I can fly. And sometimes when you're aware of it, you lose the ability to fly. And you have to start doing this sort of thing and pushing yourself and going, like swimming or struggling through the air. But when you're not aware of it, it can just happen naturally. So I find myself more and more lately having to do this sort of flapping stuff, or as I was in this particular dream. So I don't know how it happened. I had to go to a party, a family get together at this one particular location. And then for whatever reason, that one was finishing early in the evening. And then there was another one, and it was only a couple of kilometres down the road in my mind, in my head, in this dream. And so I said, oh yeah, I'll be able to ride my bike to this next party. And then as I'm riding up the road, someone from the earlier party pulls up and says, oh, you're going to ride? You know how far it is to go that, what I thought was going to be 2.5 kilometres now turned to be 2.5 hours ride? And I said, oh, really? No, I'll be fine, thanks. And as I'm riding down the road, I'm thinking, why the heck am I riding my bike? I can go back and get my car. And I'll take my car there and it'll take heaps less than 2.5 hours of ride. And so I thought, yeah, that's a really good idea. But for whatever reason, I decided to keep going forwards on the road. And next thing, I didn't even have the bike. I was just walking. I'm thinking, this is really dumb. Why am I now walking, running, jumping, when I should just go back and get the car? And I thought, well, geez, the car's all the way back there now. How about you take a shortcut over these hills. And so that's a great idea. And I thought, you know what? I can fly. I'll just bloody jump over them. And so I started flying and jumping and getting into these massive, massive trees. And this is just freaking awesome. Now, the next thing, though, bigger and bigger mountains were coming between me and the destination back to where my car was. And I'm like, oh, well, this is all right. I'll just run and jump over them. And the next thing, I'm up at the top of this highest freaking peak on the narrowest path, and I'm just running, tiptoeing across this narrow, really high gorge, and then the rocks are all starting to get super loose, and I'm just jumping over huge expanses, and I'm thinking, those people over there watching me probably thinking, what's wrong with this guy? He is mad. Nobody can go there. And yet here I am, just hopping across like a mountain goat with wings. It was just the most incredible, unbelievable feeling until all of a sudden I get this point and I'm looking down and I'm going, holy crap, that is so high. That is so high. I'm going to get killed here. But then the other part of me says, no, you're not. You can do anything. So I just started running and jumping and leaping and just threw myself off this massive, massive, massive height and going, this is just awesome. It's the most unbelievable feeling to be able to do sort of, it's like superhuman things in the first person without fear. Because the last few rocks I jumped off were so slippery, and I was like, yep, it doesn't matter. I could feel them tumbling behind me. And still I could just go flying through the air. And that's pretty much when that dream kind of ended, because I woke up and needed to take a pee. And that was that. So anyway, that's the point of my rant today. None whatsoever. Just telling a story and the adventure of some of the dreams that I've had. And I have pretty much on a nightly basis. I wake up exhausted more often than not, but at the same time, my body's been resting. Yeah, I think it's just a miracle we're all alive. So any one of us are. It's 22 minutes and 53 seconds by the time I press stop.